Senate Republicans outline border security measures they want as a condition for aiding Ukraine. AS. OCIATED Press. Senate Republicans have released a sweeping set of U.S. border security proposals as a condition for sending more aid to Ukraine, laying out a draft plan to resume construction on parts of the U.S.-Mexico border wall, curtail humanitarian parole for people who cross into the United States, and make it more difficult for migrants to qualify for asylum. President Joe Biden last month sent Congress a $105 billion request for aid to Ukraine and Israel. It also sought $14 billion for managing the in. Below are your comments. Finally we get action from Congress on the border besides nonsensical rhetoric about open border orders. Now this is a start to meaningful legislation that will make it clear to immigrants that they will not be welcomed here with open arms. That there is a process they must go through before So essentially, to undo Biden's EOs is what they want. Sounds reasonable to me. If it was me, I'd be saying I want to see mass deportations and enforcement as well, or you can just shut it down. The highest priority in order should be number 1. Border protection for the America and American people, number 2. Ukraine, number 3. Israel. Why isn't the border be number 1 priority, especially when the global war influence is evident in other countries like China, Korea, Russia, Iran, Syria, Lebanon and others are Why would anyone vote for a party that essentially allows millions of illegals to invade America? A party that gives away billions to other countries, but won't spend what it takes to keep Americans safe here at home? Are there really any more important issues for the U.S.? Not. Wait, I have the solution. This is an opportunity in the making. Flip the narrative. There are 1,954 miles of Mexico-U.S. border. There is 438 that has been built. Recommend that U.S. Corps of Engineers build a wall with solar on top to the highest standards. Each state. Next news. If the West cannot win this war, then what war can it win? Ukraine's foreign minister. Ukrainska Pravda. Ukraine's foreign minister Dmytro Kuleba has said that Ukraine is investing heavily in its own weapons production to become less dependent on Western support, as a loss in the war against Russia would be a defeat for the whole world. Below are your comments. West can win any war that doesn't involve a superpower and nuclear-armed country the stature of Russia. This should be understood. What USA is doing, trying to gauge Russia capacity and weaken Russia by Ukrainizing Ukrainians. USA is not affected by this war. In fact, USA gains from this war by selling. Russia cannot be defeated in a war where its vital strategic interests are at stake, like in Ukraine. However, there can be a tie, with the NATO countries and Russia exterminating each other with nukes. It would take a little less than 30 minutes, if both sides pressed the big red button. Bear thumbs up. Don't put the blame on the entire West. It is a war that Azov Ukr, controlled by Nadzizizi, wanted and influenced by USA to get into. Azov UKR got hundreds of billions, outspending Russia by 50x, and modern weapons from the West to fight. Take responsibility on the corruptions in UKR. Nope, the West cannot win a war against a strong opponent. US is politically designed to look good from all sides. Just look what it is doing in Israel-Hamas war and Ukraine-Russia war. US wants Russia to win with untimely and inappropriate both in quality and quantity of weaponry support to Ukraine. First good point from this guy. Yes, West got good taste of what the war with Russia will taste like. And they want none of it. Also, the war has shown that United South cannot be defeated by United West. Wish he stopped saying, "World supports Ukraine. Only 25% of the world is with you, buddy." Next news. Ukraine recap. Germany ready to assume NATO leadership role. Bloomberg. Germany is ready to take on the leadership role in NATO that allies have been urging for decades. And Europe's biggest economy and most populous nation is committed to protecting the military alliance's eastern flank against Russian aggression, according to Defense Minister Boris Pistorius. Most ad from Bloomberg Trump testimony called a broken record by judge. Trial update Israel latest. Biden discusses tactical pauses with Netanyahu. Wall Street faces reality check after Big R. Below are your comments. Maybe they will have NATO increase their budgets for defense and to assist Ukraine? Maybe they will build and buy weapons, not likely from the US, to help foster their economies and to promote future purchases in the coming years for weapons, tractors, equipment and more? That the German defense minister must have big aspirations and an even bigger ego. Germany is ready to lead militarily. Its military is not. That's how its military readiness is currently being portrayed. There is a shortage of everything from protective vests to thermal underwear. Radio equipment is 30. USA needs to be in charge and have the leadership role, not Germany. USA in charge is good because it is outside the continent and plays a more neutral, objective role. Germany in charge will raise animosities from other members towards it, not a good thing. The thing that Germany needs to do is rise. The Germans are not ready for military leadership, which means increasing tensions with Russia. It is the present U.S. obedient government that dreams about increasing their belligerent attitude among the Germans. Next news. European Commission President speaks out against frozen conflict in Ukraine. Ukrainska Pravda. Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission, stated that a stable and just peace, not a frozen conflict, must remain the goal of the war in Ukraine. Source: European Pravda. Citing von der Leyen's speech at the EU Ambassadors' Conference in Brussels on 6 November. Details. Von der Leyen stressed that the war in Ukraine had become a strategic failure for Vladimir Putin, President of Russia, but that this failure would not automatically turn into victory for Ukraine. Below are your comments. The sad part is that Washington set the war in motion. Have Americans ever thought about how many millions of refugees Washington creates with their foreign policy programs and military actions? The State Department has a never-ending supply of refugees to relocate to North America and Europe. If anything, this conflict is a strategic failure of NATO's. They failed. Now what Ukraine needs is to sit down like a grown-up and talk with Russia. Ukraine has to develop its own military-industrial complex. These huge giveaways and financial Aussie stance has to stop. She only obeys Washington's order, that is her job. Support Ukraine for as long as necessary. That is a joke. Typical rich person commentary. She's not the one that has to pay the ultimate price, as her children are not the ones being thrown into the meat grinder that she's continuing to support. She doesn't have to worry about buying food and paying FO. Next news. Zelensky says it's not the right time for elections in Ukraine. The Hill. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said in a Monday address that it is not the right time for elections in Ukraine as the end of his 5-year term approaches. Zelensky argued in his Monday video address that Ukraine should not have to deal with elections as it continues to attempt to fend off Russia, which invaded. Below are your comments. For someone who claims to champion democracy, he should really understand how bad that sounds. Is that the great democracy we are giving billions to? Of course it is not. He will be voted out of office in a heartbeat. But he needs the funds coming in, and staying in power to keep this nonsensical war going. No matter what the MSM says, he is losing this war. Only the problem is that only the eastern part is losing, the western part is just simple. I agree with him. The election in Ukraine will give Putin the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to crush the country. I don't see anyone who can manage the war better than Zelensky. The election in Ukraine will be another tool Putin will try to use for his victory. The democracy in Ukraine is not How would you hold an election when 20% of the country is under Russian occupation, and while hundreds of thousands or millions of citizens are displaced or refugees in other countries? It's impractical, of course. UKR needs to resolve this invasion problem first, and regain some stability and. Next news. Photos emerge of Russian Askold missile carrier destroyed in Kerch. Ukrainska Pravda. The first photographs of a Russian Askold missile carrier that was destroyed in the Zaliv shipyard in temporarily occupied Crimea have appeared online. Source: Center for Strategic Communications. Crimean Wind details. Ukraine's Center for Strategic Communications, Stratcom, says the ship has sustained significant damage and may be beyond repair. Below are your comments. Folks, this is easily best investment in combat in U.S. history. 300,000 dead and maimed for life Russian soldiers versus 0 NATO troopers. For a small fraction of our annual DoD budget, the US and NATO have enabled Ukraine to literally destroy half the Russian army. Now add to that major ships, Su. Hint. Look at the pic on the browser page and not on this page. I can't add it here. Sad face. The port side amidships has a big melted hole in it. It looks like a secondary explosion blew a smaller hole just aft of the entry point. It probably holds the electronics and CIC spaces. Or should I? There seems to be a huge difference in terminology about destroyed. This just proves how the fighting spirit of the Ukrainians is and the damage they're doing to the Russians, and yet, Putin can't seem to get it through his head, his army is losing day by day. Then again, I strongly believe that his pride is more important than the lives of his. Boy, those chickens are coming home, aren't they? Next news. Military intelligence. Russia stockpiling missiles in anticipation of freezing temperatures. Kyiv Independent. Russia is waiting for the temperature to drop below zero before launching mass strikes on Ukraine's energy system. Vadim Skibitsky, a representative of Ukraine's military intelligence, said in an interview with RBC Ukraine on November 6. Below are your comments. When will the US and Europe give Ukraine missiles with the same range? The stalemate in the war is caused by their dithering. It's not even close to a stalemate. It's about to be a rout of Ukraine. Kiev is running low on missiles and artillery shells, and the U.S. Congress said no more aid to Kiev. Russia has over 2 million shells in stock and is making them at a 2 million a year rate. Plus, North Korea just delivered Onyo. They are hoping to freeze the entire families to death in their cold apartments because the Russian soldier has failed in the field of battle. Russian soldiers don't look very brave running away from drones. Everything is recorded on video. They run, they crawl, they roll over on the ground, their evilness knows no bounds. Ukraine and even the West can't compete with that output because Russia is on a wartime footing. Either Ukraine needs to accept they lost the East, or else the world needs to start a wartime footing. If they want to keep up, these two outcomes are the only ones. Next news. Australia PM Albanese touts strong relationship in Xi meeting. Bloomberg. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has met with President Xi Jinping in China, becoming the first Australian leader to do so in more than 7 years and sealing a recovery in diplomatic relations between the nations. Most read from Bloomberg. Trump testimony called a broken record by judge. Trial update. Israel latest. Biden discusses tactical pauses with Netanyahu. Wall Street faces reality check after big rally. Markets wrap. AI pioneer Kai-Fu Lee builds $1 billion startup in 8M. Below are your comments. Making nice with China is profitable but ethical. If Australia could do it, surely the US and the Western countries could do it. I'll bet every penny, this will enable the whole world to take a quantum jump in peace, prosperity and progress for everyone. And the future of our next generations. If the US wants to improve relations with China, a good place to start would be to come clean about the origins of COVID. COVID was in the US the summer of 2019. What was thought to be the e-cigarette vaping illness, Avali, which peaked in September 2019, was really the first COVID wave in the world. The US and British should cancel their plan to provide Australia with submarines. Next news. We must not forget about Ukraine because of Middle East. If Ukraine loses, we will lose too, EU High Representative. Ukrainska Pravda. Josep Borrell, EU's High Representative of the Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, called on the world to prevent the decline of attention to Ukraine and the unity of its allies in its support, stressing that the future of Europe depends on the outcome of this war. Below are your comments. How are we going to lose? Russia has no chance of winning a war against the United States. Our government keeps think that if we do not fight other countries' wars against Russia we are doomed. I remember in the late 1950 when the United was so afraid of Russia attacking the United States. If Ukraine loses, the only ones disadvantaged will be the discredited ultranationalist Banderite 2Gs who stomp all over the basic rights of ethnic minorities since the 2014 coup. Ethnic Russians in East and South will be free from their control, and hopefully, for the sake of eth. I see Hungarians in. Not true. No one loses if the war ends. Both sides win. According to population analysts, Europe will likely have a majority of Muslims by this mid-century, thanks to the flood of impoverished African and Middle Easterners into Europe. Next news. Nobel Peace Prize laureate Narges Mohammadi goes on a hunger strike while imprisoned in Iran. Associated Press. Nobel Peace Prize laureate Narges Mohammadi began a hunger strike Monday over being blocked along WITH other inmates from getting medical care and to protest the country's mandatory headscarves for men, a campaign advocating for the activist said. The decision by Mohammadi, 51, increases pressure on Iran's theocracy over her incarceration, after being awarded the Nobel for her years of activism despite a decades-long campaign by the Gov.RN men targeting her. Meanwhile, another Below are your comments. Hunger strikes work only if the government wants other nations to see it as progressive. Most Middle Eastern nations don't care what the West thinks and most do not care what women think. Wish for the best for her, but she is fighting an uphill battle before the hunger strike. What good does a hunger strike do in a place where they would love it if you starved to death? I've seen pictures of Iran in the 60s. What the H happened? Meanwhile, in the heart of the axis of resistance, women are still being subjugated to medieval practices, while progressives in the West look the other way. Next news. Chechen leader Kadyrov says ex-Wagner fighters are training with his forces. Reuters. Wagner played a prominent role in some of the fiercest fighting of Russia's war in Ukraine, but its future was thrown into question when its leader Yevgeny Prigozhin was bleeped in a plane crash in August. 2 months after leading a brief mutiny against the Russian defense establishment. Kadyrov said in a message on Telegram that a big group of ex-Wagner fighters was undergoing intensive training with his own Akhmat Special Forces. Kadyrov said the drills included bleeping, field medicine and. Below are your comments. The Garden Gnome Army. Brave and efficient warriors. After Ukraine defeat the Wagner soldiers, Chechen shouldn't be a problem. Before you deploy this fodder, provide body bags. Terrorists working with other terrorists, quite shocking, I tell you. Won't matter in the end, they will all become fodder for Madman Vlad. Kadyrov says his troops will look cool in their black SUVs from US and Europe, and they'll keep our major role of TikTok army guys, trying to boost subscribers and revenue. Meantime, actual fighters from Wagner will do the fighting and the dying. Next news. Zelensky's office denies that Ukraine is very corrupt, saying such challenges exist worldwide. Ukrainska Pravda. Andriy Yermak, head of the office of the President of Ukraine, has expressed surprise at remarks made by former European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker about Ukraine being corrupt, stressing that such challenges exist all over the world and Ukraine is pressing ahead with reforms even in war-time conditions. Below are your comments. Obama, Biden and DNC can give him lessons on corruption. They are experts. Neither one has held a job or produced anything except problems for citizens, increased taxes and inflation. However, they have amassed immense fortunes. Their governing political party is called Servant of the People. The people of Ukraine voted them in so they could uproot the corruption there. Now the Servant of the People says corruption is acceptable because it is practiced in other countries too. So, in addition to institutionalizing corruptio, when VP Biden got the investigation on his son stopped, that should tell you something. Then when he started giving billions as president, should have confirmed corruption. Next news. Russia's economy may overheat due to transition to war mode, UK intelligence. Ukrainska Pravda. UK intelligence has predicted that the increase in inflation in Russia, driven by rising consumer prices, particularly for food and fuel, will almost certainly lead to an increase in its spending on financing the war against Ukraine. Below are your comments. I am not an expert on the Russian economy. That said, they have made great strides economically since the doldrum days of the 1990s. Aside from being a major energy exporter, Russia is now a major grain producer. In the late 1970s, Russia had to import wheat from the USA. Now their farms produce more. The people who can produce a Tchaikovsky and a Tolstoy deserve better than a Putinesque kleptocracy. No wonder people of talent, insight and fortitude are leaving Russia. Who wants to invest their future with the Putin bunch? Nestle, Unilever, and PepsiCo are all fighting to keep prices down in Russia. By raising the prices of their goods in the West, they can lower prices for Russians. Russia has the same GDP as New York, so something has to happen. It's not cheap to throw the entire planet into crisis. Next news. Do not spread fake news. This is not the time for elections. Zelensky. Ukrainska Pravda. President Volodymyr Zelensky said that now is not the time to prepare for elections and that Ukraine should focus on the fight against the Russians. Source. Zelensky's evening address quote, "We all understand that now is wartime. When there are many challenges, it is irresponsible to spread fake news about elections in society in such a frivolous way." Below are your comments. If Ukraine tried to hold elections, Russia would target them relentlessly. Any gathering of people would be bombed. It's simply not worth risking so many lives, and Ukraine's citizens largely agree. Everything Ukraine says nowadays contradicts itself. It calls its war fight for democracy but no election until war is over? So when does this war over? When so-called Zelensky's 10-point peace plan that includes war tribunal and reparation for Russia kicks in? In how many years? So as long as Ukraine don't surrender, Mr. Z won't step down. Ukraine is a great democracy deserving more of our social security. Nothing screams democracy like no elections, state-owned media and banned religions. Next news. Kim Jong-un orders support for Palestine amid Israel-Hamas war, report. Next shark. Key details. National Intelligence Service Director Kim Kyo-yeon informed South Korean lawmakers during the 2023 National Assembly audit on Wednesday that Kim instructed his officials to create ways to comprehensively support Palestine. Rep. Yoo Sang-bum, the executive secretary for the Assembly Intelligence Committee, added during the audit that North Korea could also engage in arms trades with militant groups in the ongoing Israel-Hamas war. Below are your comments. Of course he backs terrorists. One oppressive government has to support others to justify and attempt to validate their own existence. See. That's the way the world works, and it works for democracies as well. It's always been an us against them reality. Send pot stickers and noodles ramen. See who is on the side of the protesters. Nice, right? Israel must be so disappointed that a robust economy like North Korea is siding with Hamas. Who would have thought? Maybe he can be persuaded to take on a few 100,000 refugees from Gaza as new citizens of number. RTH Korea, smiling in the warm sun, well-fed and happy. Next news. Aid to Ukraine's commander-in-chief bleep at home near Kyiv in grenade explosion. Ukrainska Pravda. Hennady Chestyakov, an aide to Valery Zaluzhny, commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine, has died as a result of careless handling of a grenade in the village of Chaiky in Kyiv Oblast. Source: Mariana Reva, spokesperson for the Ministry of Internal Affairs of Ukraine. Ukrainska Pravda sources in law enforcement quote, "A 39-year-old serviceman has died at his home in the village of Chaiky as a result of careless handling of ammunition." Below are your comments. Something more is happening here that's not being said. Zaluzhny received the message. No more interviews. I believe this was the guy who was gonna give an interview on how Zelensky and his cronies stole millions of US donated dollars. He needed to be Minecrafted for knowing too much. He made quick buck selling weapons to Hamas, and now got a gift from Mossad. How do they know? Did he tell them it was careless? How do they know it was not intentional? Far as I can tell, only one person knows the truth, and he is gone. Next news. Russia's Hitler Youth, Russian occupiers in Crimea organize military training for children. The EU Voice of Ukraine. Russian occupiers in Crimea have organized military training for children, as revealed in a November 6 report by Crimea Realities. The report follows a segment aired on Russia 1 TV that highlighted the School of Young Commanders, established by the pro-Putin youth movement UNARMIA in the region. Below are your comments. Then they will meet the same fate as the original H-Youth, basically sent out as cannon fodder as a last desperate measure to cling to power. Valid military targets then? Putin commits a war crime against his own country by training children as combatants. Putin should value those children. Russia is not going to have many more. All their young men have either fled or are Ukraine fertilizer. Russia has too. They have tried activating criminals as red meat for the front lines, and all of their youth are dead in the war zone. Next are women and children, then the elderly. Russia, you need to stop this carnage. Get rid of Putin. Next news. Kyiv will overlook Taurus missiles if Berlin provides more air defense systems, says Kuleba. The new Voice of Ukraine. Kyiv would be willing to turn a blind eye to Germany's refusal to provide Ukraine with long-range Taurus missiles if Berlin supplies additional air defense systems, Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba said in an interview with German newspaper Die Welt. Below are your comments. Haha, how generous of Ukrainians, they be willing to turn a blind eye to Germany's refusal to provide Ukraine with long-range Taurus missiles. Taurus missiles and air defense systems are not equivalent. A Taurus missile is an offensive weapon which will lead to winning. Air defense systems are defensive weapons which leads to the status quo, at best. It must be nice to see more young Ukrainians sacrificed by you and your cronies in the government. And for what? For helping NATO to weaken Russia, which is no threat to Europe. As more and more the West pulls back its giving, they'll say meh, we really didn't need 'em anyway. We'll overlook. Next news. Israel's cyber defense chief tells CNN he's concerned Iran could increase severity of its cyber attack. CNN. After suspected Iranian hackers claimed a string of hacks on Israeli security cameras in the last weeks, Israel's cyber defense chief tells CNN he is very concerned that Iran could escalate its long-running covert battle with Israel in cyberspace with more serious and disruptive cyberattacks on Israeli infrastructure as the war between Israel and Hamas shows no sign of ending. Below are your comments. There is a gap between their cyber capabilities and their rhetoric, the official told CNN, referring to Iran-backed hackers. But we know they are rather reckless and not savvy to do things in a tailored way. Other sources put their bleep on the levels of Russia and China. Oh well, I guess they are going to fall asleep on the job again and get hacked then. Whine, whine, whine. Israelis whining again against Iran. Iran is going to do this. Iran is going to that. We'll be in trouble. Iran is going to escalate. Next news. Your Mac claps back at Italy's Meloni for comments to Russian pranksters. Remember your history. New voice of Ukraine. World leaders should stick by Ukraine, Presidential Office head Andriy Yermak said in an interview WITH Politico published on November 6, and also pushed back hard on the idea, voiced by Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni in a call with Russian pranksters, that many are growing tired of the war in Ukraine. Below are your comments. Where did they all get them green outfits? Amazon? Yermak, you need to go back to school and learn history. In 1939 Great Britain left Poland to Hitler. In 1943 Ukrainians, Nazi sympathizers killed 100,000 Poles, mostly women and children. Ukraine needs to stop reliving the 20th century. This is the 21st century, and according to population experts, Europe will have a majority of Muslim citizens by the mid-century thanks to the flood of poor immigrants from Africa and the Middle East. Not a Russian nor a Chinese invasion. Next news. Former deputy defense minister accused of stealing $28 million through military uniform scam. The voice of Ukraine. A former Ukrainian deputy defense minister stands accused of embezzling nearly a billion hryvnias, $28 million, by purchasing subpar military uniforms from a private company, Ukraine's SBU Security Service report. Ed on November 6, citing collected evidence. Below are your comments. $28 million, stolen from the U.S. taxpayer. And this is just a drop in the bucket. This is where the dollar billions in welfare we provide to Ukraine is going. Well, at least we found where 28 million of Joe's money went. Stop sending Ukraine money. Let Biden pay them off with his own money. Moscow speaks and reports. November 6, 2023. The main thing from the briefing of the Russian Defense Ministry on November 6, 2023. Over the past day, the losses of the armed forces of Ukraine amounted to 860 Kiev militants. The armed forces of the Russian Federation have shot down 2 HIMARS missile. Next news. Russia produced 115 high-precision missiles in October, with 870 missiles in stock in total, Intel. Agence. Ukrainska Pravda. Russia produced 115 high-precision missiles with an effective range of more than 350 kilometers in October, said Vadim Skibitsky, a representative of Ukraine's defense intelligence. Source: Defense Intelligence of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, citing Major General Skibitsky in an interview with RBC Ukraine details. An intelligence representative said that 115 of those missiles are 40 Kh-101 cruise missiles, 30 Iskander-M ballistic missiles, 20 caliber cruise missiles, 12 Iskander-K cruise. Below are your comments. Despite sanctions, they are able to produce weapons. So what is Plan B? So Russia produced enough missiles for one strike? What is a high-precision reconnaissance missile? Just think of those poor washing machines that are now missing their chips. A reconnaissance missile. Nice one, Yahoo! Next news. Taurus missiles no game changer for Ukraine, Pistorius says after Germany rejects their transfer. The new voice of Ukraine. Taurus missiles will not significantly alter the dynamics of the ongoing war initiated by Russia against Ukraine, German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius said during NATO talk conference in Berlin on November 6. Below are your comments. Let me translate his statement for you. If we send the Taurus, Putin won't give us cheap oil. The German political classes have been under the pay of the Kremlin for 25 years. Angela Merkel and her cronies were so thoroughly compromised that the blinders still haven't completely come off. The Germans have done a good job in providing equipment to the Ukrainians, just not the equipment the 500 kilometers greater than 160 kilometers. Why would that not be a game changer? He is right. The long-promised GLSDBs would be the most effective missiles to suit the immediate needs of the UK. Iranians. Next news. Traitor who leaked locations of Special Operations Forces during occupation of Kherson sentenced to 15 years. Ukrainska Pravda. A collaborator who was leaking locations of secret bases of the Ukrainian Special Operations Forces during the occupation of Kherson was sentenced to 15 years in prison in Odessa. Source: Odessa Oblast Prosecutor's Office. The Odessa Oblast Department of the Security Service of Ukraine. SSU. UP's source in law enforcement details. A resident of Kherson was found guilty of high treason and sentenced to 15 years in prison with confiscation of property. Below are your comments. It should have been a firing squad to send a message. Benedict Arnold and Quisling. This one likewise betrayed his own country and caught. I would not have been so lenient. Lucky to be alive. He needs to go to mine detection school. Madame Cleo says, I see a sore barn door in his future. Next news. Russian attack Kherson with record number of aerial bombs and damaged 20 homes in Odessa overnight. UK. Rayanska Pravda. Russian forces injured at least 8 people and damaged 20 apartment buildings in Odessa and launched a record number of aerial bombs on Kherson Oblast during its attack on the night of the 5th to the 6th of November. Source: Ihor Klimenko, Minister of Internal Affairs of Ukraine, on Telegram. Details. Russian forces attacked Odessa at around 2100. Below are your comments. Record number of aerial bombs. Injured at least 8 people and damaged 20 apartment buildings in Odessa and launched a record number of aerial bombs on Kherson Oblast. For someone supposedly targeting civilians, they're sure doing a lousy job of it. I like the idea. No casualties. However, there are many casualties that they are not reported. Journalism at its best. They get it wrong most of the time on purpose. Rolling on the floor laughing smiling face popcorn. Next news. George Santos offers deranged new explanation on Jewish heritage. The New Republic. Representative George Santos says he can prove he has Jewish heritage, but it will have to wait until the Ukraine war is over. The New York Republican has been plagued by controversy since arriving on Capitol Hill, including over his apparent lie that he is Jewish. Santos claims that his grandparents were Jews who fled persecution in Ukraine and then again in Belgium before settling in Brazil. Santos insisted in a Sunday night interview that everything he has said about his heritage is true and Below are your comments. A lot of people's parents survived the Holocaust, doesn't mean they were Jews. George Santos is what conservatism offers America these days. Republicans didn't vote to remove him. But you can, in fact, with your 2024 vote, you can remove them all. Deranged is the word. Next news. Zelensky denies war is at stalemate as Ukraine counteroffensive struggles. HuffPost. The commander-in-chief of Ukraine's armed forces had previously suggested a significant breakthrough in the fight against Russia is unlikely. Below are your comments. When this piezo cheat gets to Florida, it'll be fun. Th counteroffensive was a dismal failure. It's pretty much over for Ukraine. He is right, the war is not at a stalemate. Ukraine soldiers are marching backwards firing their guns, that is not a stalemate. His only hope of survival is that he continues to put out the lies that are given to him by England and the US. All he's accomplished is the mass death of his own people, and at the end of the day he will be 1-0. F them. Denial is the first step always. Rolling on the floor laughing smiling face popcorn. Next news. Military. Russian ship Askold possibly beyond repair following Ukraine's strike. Kyiv Independent. The Russian Askold cruise missile carrier has suffered significant damage following Ukraine's strike on Crimea on November 4, possibly rendering it beyond repair, the Ukrainian military's Office of GIC Communications, Stratcom, said on November 6. Below are your comments. It is beautiful the way it looks now. Where are the other ships? It's more of a missile magnet than deployment device. That'll buff right out. Captain was warned not to park it there. Ukraine is doing the world a great favor by showing how weak Russia is when it comes to equipment, see cowardly troops, and an inept leader Putin. Keep on destroying Russia. Ukraine, the world thanks you. Next news. South Africa recalls all diplomats from Israel. BBC. The move is in response to one of the heaviest nights of airstrikes in Gaza since the conflict began. Below are your comments. Make no mistake, Hamas does not have fighters. Hamas produced subhuman cowardly terrorists. Apartheid, as stated by South Africa and most other Hamas supporters, is merely thinly veiled anti-Semitism. There is no justification for not condemning Hamas atrocities on October 7 nor for SUPO. Does the South African government have an opinion on the definition of the term human shields? If their complaint is genuine, they would demand that Hamas cease using a strategy designed to cause civilian deaths. But no, they demand nothing of Hamas. Interesting. Next news. Explosion bleep Zelensky's assistant at home. The new voice of Ukraine. Major Hennady Chastyakov, who served as an assistant to Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine Valery Zelensky, has died in an explosion while celebrating his birthday at home, Zelensky said in a Telegram post on November 6. Below are your comments. It was definitely not a random explosion. The investigation should check who gave presents. One was from a Russian collaborator. Interesting timing. Zaluzny got the message. No more interviews. Both of those dudes, Zaluzny and the comedian, should be on lookout. The present was from Zelensky. Apparently the major wasn't as generous to the little man as he should have been. Next news. Zelensky asks Parliament to extend martial law, general mobilization until next February. The new VOICE of Ukraine. President Volodymyr Zelensky has submitted bills to extend martial law and general mobilization in Ukraine for another 90 days, according to the website of the Verkhovna Rada, Ukrainian parliament. On November 6. Below are your comments. Government control at its finest. Martial law is like democracy wearing a ski mask and holding .380 auto. Put the votes in the bag. Now. Zelensky needs to keep his eye on his generals. They are starting to question his decisions. That is not good if you look back in history. A Biden's 1984 democracy truly. Next news. French arms manufacturer signs $38 million deal to supply Ukrainian military. Kyiv Independent. France's oldest arms manufacturer Verny Caron has signed a $38 million contract to supply Ukraine with 10,000 assault rifles, 2,000 sniper rifles, and 400 grenade launchers, its parent company Cyber Gun Group announced on November 6. Below are your comments. Ukrainian funds? They mean U.S. taxpayer funds. All about the profits of the arms manufacturers. No talk of resolution. Delivery to be spread over 10 months. So they don't expect this to be over any time soon. Ukraine doesn't have any funds, so they are not putting in anything. Please subscribe to my channel. And if you like it, please thumbs up.